At exactly 3 a.m., the palace became quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The lights dimmed slightly. The long crystal halls stopped echoing. Even the guards on the inner levels felt a strange pressure in their chests, as if the building itself was holding its breath. This was the hour when no meetings were held, no orders were given, and no questions were asked. This was the hour when Queen Siren walked alone. She was the ruler of the Varelian Empire, a civilization feared across hundreds of star systems. Her name alone could end rebellions or start wars. Her image was carved into planets. To most beings, she was not a person, she was a force. But at 3 a.m., she wore no heavy crown, no ceremonial armor. Only a simple dark robe flowed behind her as she moved through the empty corridor. She stopped in front of a small metal door near the outer wall of the palace. It was not a grand door. No gold, no symbols of power. Just a number stamped into the steel. Guard post 17. Inside stood a single human guard. His name was Eli Carter. Eli was not important in the eyes of the Empire. He was one of many humans assigned to low-risk palace security. He had been chosen because humans were considered calm, obedient, and replaceable. Eli had been awake for hours. He always was. He stood straight, holding his stun rifle loosely, eyes slightly tired but focused. He had learned quickly that the palace had its own rhythm at night, a rhythm that felt old and lonely. Then came the sound. A soft knock. Eli froze. No one knocked on guard doors. His heart began to beat faster. Slowly, he walked forward and opened the door. Standing there was the queen, his breath caught in his throat. Every instinct screamed at him to kneel, to bow his head low, to avoid eye contact. That was how everyone treated her. But instead, he did something simple. He straightened and said, "Good evening, Your Majesty." The queen studied him. Her eyes glowed faintly in the low light, ancient and tired. "You are on duty," she said. "Yes, ma'am," Eli replied. There was a pause, a long one. Then she asked, "May I enter?" Eli stepped aside immediately. Of course. No one had ever asked him permission before. The room was small. One chair, a narrow table, a screen showing silent security feeds. It smelled faintly of metal and recycled air. The queen stood inside, looking around like she was seeing something new. "You may sit," Eli said, gesturing to the chair. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I will stand." That first night, she stayed only a few minutes. She asked him basic questions. "How long is your shift? Do you miss your homeworld? Does the night feel long to humans?" Eli answered honestly. Simple words. No politics. No fear. "Yes, it's long. Yes, I miss home. Yes, nights give too much time to think." She listened closely. Too closely. When she left, she nodded once and said, "Thank you, Guard Carter." After she was gone, Eli stood still for a long time, wondering if he had imagined it. But the next night, she returned. Again at 3 a.m. Again, a knock. Again, she asked to enter. Each night, the visits grew slightly longer. 10 minutes, 15. She spoke more. He listened. He noticed small things. Her shoulders were always tense. Her hands sometimes trembled. Her voice softened when she spoke of nothing important. One night, unable to hold his curiosity, Eli asked gently, "May I ask something, ma'am?" She looked at him. "You may. Why do you come here?" The queen did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "Because," she said, "this is the only place in the palace where no one looks at me like a god or a weapon." Eli felt a tightness in his chest. He did not know it yet, but at 3 a.m. every night, something far greater than an empire was beginning to change, and the galaxy was not ready for it. The palace learned to hide secrets well. Corridors erased footsteps. Cameras looped old footage. At 3 a.m., The Varelian palace pretended nothing unusual ever happened. But something was happening. Every night, Queen Sirin returned to guard post 17. She did not announce herself. She did not summon guards or servants. She simply walked, alone, through halls built for rulers and stopped at a door built for someone small. And every night, Eli Carter opened it. At first, Eli was terrified. He had trained for attacks, for emergencies, for alien threats. He had never trained for a queen standing 3 steps away, watching him with eyes older than human history. Yet, he did something strange. He spoke normally, not careless, not rude, just human. "How is your day, ma'am?" he asked one night, unsure why the words even came out. The queen blinked. "No one has ever asked me that," she replied. That night, she stayed longer. She began to notice him more closely, the way he stood without shaking, the way he met her eyes but did not challenge her, way he listened without interrupting. Humans were considered fragile by the galaxy, short-lived, emotional, easy to break. But Eli had something the queen had not seen in centuries. Balanced. One night, she asked, "Are you not afraid of me, human?" Eli thought carefully before answering. "I am afraid," he said. "But fear doesn't mean I stop being polite." The queen felt something tighten inside her chest. In the Empire, fear meant silence, obedience, distance. To Eli, fear meant respect. She began to talk more. About endless meetings, about planets that bowed, but never spoke honestly. About how every word she said was weighed, recorded, feared. Eli did not offer solutions. He did not praise her. He just listened. That was new. One night, she noticed his tired eyes and asked, "Why do you volunteer for night watch so often?" Eli smiled weakly. "It's easier," he said. "The night doesn't expect much from you." She understood that too well. Slowly, the guard room changed. Not in shape, in feeling. It became a place where silence was not heavy, where words did not cut like blades, where a queen could speak without ruling. Then one night, she asked the question that truly mattered. "What would you do," she said softly, "if I were not your queen?" Eli swallowed. "I'd still open the door," he answered, "and ask if you're okay." The queen looked away, her eyes glowing brighter than usual, for the first time in 300 years. She felt seen. And somewhere deep within the palace walls, unseen eyes began to notice something was wrong. Queen Sirin ruled over trillions of lives. Her word could ignite wars or end them. Entire systems trembled at the thought of her displeasure. She was a symbol of power, of history, of a galaxy that had been built on fear. And yet, she could not sleep. The palace at night was silent, but for her, the silence was deafening. In her chambers, the crown that weighed heavy on her brow felt lighter than the weight in her chest. Memories she tried to forget kept surfacing. The faces of those she had lost, friends she had trusted, her mate, who had died centuries ago, still vivid in her mind. Her children, scattered across star systems, too busy with politics to remember their mother's loneliness. Everyone around her spoke politely, carefully, fearfully. Nobody ever spoke freely. Except Eli. Every night at 3 a.m., he opened the metal door of guard post 17 and let her in. He did not bow low. He did not speak in fearful tones. He simply said, "Good evening, Your Majesty," and waited. That simple act, the simplest act of respect and humanity, was enough to break something inside her. One night, she leaned against the wall of his small guard room and asked quietly, "Why do humans sleep so lightly?" Eli shrugged. "We don't always. But nights give us time. Time to think. Time to remember. Time to feel things we hide during the day." Her gaze softened. She realized that humans, though fragile, carried a strength she had never understood. They felt everything and yet continued forward. They loved and lost and still chose to rise each day. She admitted, almost in a whisper, "I have ruled for so long, but I have never known peace." Eli tilted his head. "Maybe you're looking for it in the wrong places. Maybe peace isn't something a crown can give you." The queen stared at him, astonished. No one, not her advisors, not her generals, had ever spoken so openly to her. Their words were always measured, calculated, or coded in fear. Eli's words were raw, honest, human. For the first time she allowed herself to speak of the weight she carried. "I have watched worlds bend to my will. I have started wars. I have crushed rebellions. Yet, each night, I feel more alone than ever. I cannot sleep. I cannot rest. I cannot find comfort." Eli stepped closer, careful not to touch her, but his presence alone was grounding. "You're not alone right now," he said. "Right here, you have someone who listens. That matters." The queen closed her eyes. The sound of her own breathing was loud in the quiet room. She had spent centuries surrounded by advisors, generals, diplomats, and spies, and yet she had never felt heard. "You see me," she whispered. "No one else has seen me for centuries." The queen felt tears sting her eyes. For the first time in hundreds of years, she was not the all-powerful ruler of trillions. She was simply Siren, a woman who could be afraid, a woman who could hope, a woman who could feel. I cannot promise them that I will survive this," she admitted. "But I can promise you, you will never face this alone." Eli nodded, and in that silent room, they understood something neither of them had expected. Trust could be stronger than fear. Courage could outshine power. And one human's loyalty could ignite hope in the heart of a queen who had forgotten what it meant to be seen. That night, the small guard room became more than a place of duty. It became a sanctuary, a place where truth was spoken, where fear was acknowledged but not allowed to rule, where the most unlikely bond in the galaxy was forged, a bond strong enough to challenge empires and change history. When the first light of dawn began to touch the outer halls, the queen left quietly, her steps lighter than they had been in centuries. Eli stood at his post, heart pounding, knowing the galaxy outside was vast and dangerous, but for the first time, he did not feel small. Because sometimes he realized one human and one queen, together, could be stronger than any army, and the night of truth had just begun. By dawn, the palace was in chaos. The High Council had acted, orders were sent, guards were mobilized. Surveillance. Drones swarmed every hallway, every corridor, every corner where the queen might have stepped without permission. They wanted to control the narrative, to assert power, to show that no human could ever matter more than the empire itself. Eli Carter, still at his post, had expected the confrontation. He had trained for emergencies, for attacks, for blaster fire. But nothing had prepared him for the weight of standing against centuries of fear and authority. He felt the pressure in his chest, the kind that makes muscles stiff and hearts pound. Yet he did not flinch. The council arrived at Guard Post 17. Blasters raised, shields activated. Their leader barked orders, demanding Eli step aside. "You cannot protect her, human. Move." Eli's voice was calm, almost too calm. "I am not moving. She is not just a ruler. She is a being who deserves respect. And I will not let fear decide my actions." Shock rippled through the council ranks. No human had ever spoken with such resolve. No human had ever challenged centuries of authority without flinching. Then the unexpected happened. Communication channels across the outer systems crackled to life. The human fleets had arrived, not in aggression, not in attack, but in presence. Ships of every size hovered at the borders of Varelian space, their weapons cold but ready. Their message was simple, transmitted to every council member in every palace screen. He stood alone so she would not be alone. "If he falls, you answer to us all." The galaxy watched, holding its breath. Alien worlds that had never respected humanity now paused, seeing a species small in number but vast in courage. Inside the guard room, Ellie looked at the Queen. Her face reflected relief, awe, and a rare, fragile vulnerability. "You didn't expect this," she said softly. "No," he replied. "But I expected them to underestimate humanity. And now they see what we can do together." The Council hesitated. They could act, try to assert control, punish Eli, punish the Queen, but the fleets outside were a reminder. Humans did not bow to fear. They did not kneel to threats. And when one human stood for another, even a queen, the consequences could reach across the stars. Finally, the Council backed down, their blasters lowered, their orders faltering. The guards retreated, whispering, confused and afraid. They had faced power, and now they faced something entirely different. Principle, courage, and loyalty stronger than fear. Eli turned to Sirin. "You are safe," he said simply. She shook her head, a faint smile breaking through her exhaustion. "You saved me," she said. "Not just from them, but from myself, from centuries of solitude and duty, from forgetting that life is meant to be shared." Eli nodded, feeling a pride he had never felt in all his human life. "You taught me something too, ma'am. Even a queen can need someone to see them. And when someone is seen, they become unstoppable." The Queen's chest rose and fell, steadying. She felt a warmth she had not known for centuries. Fear and power had ruled her life for so long, but now something else ruled her heart: trust. And in that moment, something profound happened. Humanity, the species that had been underestimated and dismissed across countless systems, had shown the galaxy that courage was not measured in fleets or planets. It was measured in the willingness to stand for what is right. Eli looked outside the small guardroom window. The stars shone differently that morning. They were no longer just distant suns. They were witnesses. Witnesses to a bond that had changed the course of history. For the first time, Queen Sirin did not feel alone. For the first time, the Empire understood that the smallest, simplest acts, listening, standing, protecting, could shake worlds. And somewhere deep in her chest, she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had stood up, and the galaxy would never be the same. Years passed, but the story of those nights at 3 a.m. never faded. Across the galaxy, beings told tales of a human guard who stood calmly before a queen, and of a ruler who finally allowed herself to be seen, not as a goddess, not as a weapon, but as a woman. Queen Sirin's palace no longer felt empty at night. The halls still gleamed with polished metal and ancient crystal. But now, when the lights dimmed at 3 a.m., there was no fear. Instead, there was quiet understanding, the sense that something extraordinary had occurred within these walls. Aile Carter had remained at the palace for years, not as a mere guard, but as a trusted companion and advisor. Though he was human, fragile in the eyes of alien species, he had taught an empire that courage and loyalty were more powerful than fear. That even the smallest being, the simplest voice, could shift the balance of worlds. Every night, without fail, the Queen would appear at the metal door of Guard Post 17. Sometimes they spoke softly of the past, of memories that haunted them. Sometimes they spoke of distant stars, of planets they would never visit. Sometimes they said nothing at all, letting the silence hold meaning instead of emptiness. And every night, Eli would greet her as he always had. "Good evening, ma'am." Their bond was no longer a secret, but the galaxy accepted it. They had learned that power alone does not command respect. Respect comes from understanding, from standing for someone else when the world expects you to step back. It comes from simple human acts that even an empire feared because they were too honest, too pure, too impossible to control. The High Council was dissolved, their fear replaced by a quiet reverence. The Varelian Empire became stronger, not because it ruled with an iron fist, but because it had learned the value of trust, compassion, and courage. They had learned that Even the smallest human could remind the greatest ruler what it meant to be alive. The queen herself changed. She smiled more often. She laughed, though softly, in places no one else could hear. She slept better at night, knowing she was seen, not for the crown she wore, but for the soul beneath it. And every night, at 3 a.m., she knocked on the metal door, not because she needed protection, but because she wanted to share a moment of truth with someone who understood her completely. Ayla looked at her quietly, the stars outside the window reflecting in his eyes. "You're not alone," he said, the words simple but heavy with meaning. "I am not," she replied, her voice steady, warm. And the Empire watched from afar, but it no longer feared. Instead, they learned something that had been forgotten in the annals of power. The galaxy is strongest when hearts are brave, when voices speak truth, and when even the smallest human can teach a queen the meaning of trust. And so, the nights at 3 a.m. continued. The world outside the palace might have thought them quiet, ordinary, insignificant. But inside that small guard room, history had been made not with weapons, not with fleets, not with treaties or wars, but with honesty, courage, and connection. The queen and the human guard had changed each other. They had changed an empire. They had changed the galaxy. And in the endless reaches of space, it was remembered that the most powerful thing in the universe was not fear, not control, not armies, but a single human who dared to stand and a queen who dared to be seen. From that night forward, every time the stars shone brightest over the Varelian Empire, the tale whispered itself across worlds, that humanity could rise, not by domination, but by heart. And every night at 3 a.m., the queen knocked. And every night, humanity answered.